Alright, this is my review of the MSI GS75. I believe this is the 9SF. So, where to begin? This laptop is one of the best laptops in the market right now. There's nothing out there besides, you know, something with like an i9 and a GTX 2080. And the price point, unless you are trying to replace your desktop, or unless you don't have a desktop, there's really, in my eyes, there's no need for that type of performance or the cost that it requires to have something like that. I mean, I could have easily purchased the same laptop, just a little bit more, an i7-9750H, which is what this is, 144 hertz monitor, IPS, 1 millisecond, very good, you know, an extra 16 gigs of RAM, and a 2080. But the price difference is just, to me, wasn't worth it, because you gotta, when you're buying a laptop, you gotta think about, do you have a desktop? Is it a good desktop? I have an amazing desktop, 240 hertz monitor, 2080 Ti, an 8700K, so I'm not really going to be spending a lot of time gaming on this. Now, if that's different for you, that's one of the things I think you got to decide is, you know, I know a lot of people out there are impulsive on buying a laptop. They're like, I want to get the next one up, or the best one, or like they got to have the best one. But for me, I almost went down that road. I almost bought the best laptop I could get, but I was, you know, I stepped back for a second. I thought, I'm not going to be spending time gaming on this, really. I'm using it for work. I want something fast. I want something reliable. But if I want a game, I want it to be able to run it. Not necessarily maxed out, but close. So the performance so far has been very good. As good as any desktop this day and age, especially with this new CPU, the 9750H. It's a hex-core processor that hits 4 gigahertz. They say it can boost up to 4.5. I haven't really seen that yet, mainly because I'm thinking it's thermal throttling. Now, if you were to buy this laptop, I had some credits at Best Buy, so I used those credits to put it towards this. But if you were going to buy a laptop, I would recommend looking at a website called HID Evolution, which you can choose to have them reapply the thermal paste on the CPU and the GPU, which will give you, you know, anywhere from 5, 10, maximum of 12 degrees difference, you know, under load. So right now, this thing, you know, under load, I would say runs the GPU much cooler, but the CPU is really where that thermal paste will affect performance in a sense. I mean, it's not going to be night and day. You'll just get a little bit more, maybe a few more FPS and a little bit cooler. I mean, I don't really care about that as much as I used to, so I didn't do that. I didn't go down that route. Another thing to keep in mind is, one of the things I've noticed is you do have access to MSI's software, obviously, and you can come in here and set a custom fan curve. Now, one of the things I noticed is kind of odd is I set my custom fan curve, but it actually, with this fan curve, and it was actually cooling it better, I was actually getting less boost on the CPU, so I'm not sure what that's about. So I just went ahead and put it back to auto, and it seems to actually boost a little higher. I think it sits around 3.8 gigahertz when it's really under load, so it's still good. And I think you guys will be surprised when you see that this processor in a laptop actually it comes pretty darn close to the performance of an 8700K desktop CPU. Well, here's my desktop. You can see 8700K. I got a 2080 Ti. 8700K is, I disabled the overclock for this comparison because I wanted to see what a base 8700K versus this CPU, which I don't know why it's saying 8850. That's not correct. That's kind of odd. Let's see what it says. Yeah, I don't know. My task manager 9750H. So I don't know if that's a glitch. I mean, this is CPU Z. Could be a glitch. I don't know. But anyways, so it is in fact the model, the 9750H. So I'm not going to worry about it because I know it is. Let's go ahead and run Cinebench. I will run this at the same time as my desktop. I'll give the laptop a head start. You know, let's put the mouse right over it. So let's start it on the laptop. Let's start it on the desktop. So as you can see, even starting the actual benchmark was just a smidge faster, just starting it on the laptop. Whether or not the laptop will finish first, I don't know yet. Another thing I notice is when you're looking at the cores completing Cinebench, it almost looks like there's always a couple cores that are completing the benchmark faster than some of the other cores. Now, I'm not sure what that's about. I'm assuming just in general some of the cores are more powerful or have better cooling or, you know, something of that nature. But just an observation. Alright, so 8700K scored a 2655, not overclocked, and the 9750H scored a 2788, which is better than a Xeon X5650, 12-core CPU. So there you go. There is the performance of the CPU. Now, obviously, the games that are CPU intense, that does help. Now, this being a GTX 2070 Max-Q, and my desktop being a 2080, so the CPU, you know, obviously is going to help a little bit, but where it really matters for games, the graphics card, obviously the desktop's going to smoke this thing. But nonetheless, let's run a quick Firestrike bench on the laptop, and then I'll run it on the desktop so you guys can just get an idea of what a desktop 2080 Ti versus a Max-Q GTX RTX 2070 is like. Another thing I'd like to say is that 144 Hz IPS know, my desktop being a 240 Hz G-Sync monitor, this is 144 Hz non-G-Sync IPS. It is pretty damn smooth. So I've seen one other really nice IPS. I think it was a Dell 165 Hz. It was like this large monitor. I've noticed that high refresh rates on IPSs versus high refresh rates on TN panels, it actually looks smoother on IPSs for some reason. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's better technology. But when I jumped from a 144 Hz to a 240 Hz TN panel, it was definitely noticeable. And the smoothness and clarity of 144 IPS isn't too far off, I want to say, in the performance and visible page tearing as this 244 Hz Alienware on my desktop, which is kind of odd. Just as a note, the 1 millisecond is amazing, I do have to say, especially playing first-person shooters. And another thing I want to say about whether you're deciding to buy a 15-inch or a 17-inch, these days, you know, I thought 17 inches were going to be heavy and to lug around. I mean, this is only, I think, 4.5 or it's under 5 pounds. It's really thin. It's a great quality build. The keyboard, being a SteelSeries, is very easy to type on. It gets a little hot if you're gaming after a while, which is, you know, to be expected because the GPU and CPU are right here. The cooling is still good. But I tried gaming. I bought a GS75 for my girlfriend, and that had a 2060 140 Hz monitor. So a very similar setup. It had an i7-9750H, so the one generation behind this, still hex core. But competitive gaming was difficult on it just because of the size of the screen. So if you plan on buying a laptop and you are a competitive gamer, you're playing Apex, Counter-Strike, Battlefield, or anything of those, unless you have an external monitor you plan on using, I suggest considering moving to a 17-inch just because it's that much more screen space to see characters. I mean, everything was just so tiny. It was difficult to, I mean, I found myself like leaning in. Okay, so I got a score on Firestrike 15,282. Let's close that. Exit out of Steam. Let's come over here. Log into Steam on this. Took that picture, by the way. In the Philippines, it's very beautiful. I'm going to pause because I have to access my guard code. Okay, we're back. I'm going to disable the demo. Demo's disabled. Okay, let's run this guy. Yeah. So my desktop has a Samsung 500 terabyte NVMe Evo. I can't remember if it's the Pro or the Economy. I think it's the Economy one, which it has good speeds. But even this, it has a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Just launching the benchmark seemed faster, so that's one thing I definitely, for productivity, this thing is amazing. If you have any sort of work to do in Excel or just multiple tabs, multiple programs, it doesn't skip a beat, you know, versus a desktop. And like I said, that's one thing you should consider before buying something like this. Do you really plan on gaming on it, or are you going to take advantage of it? If not, I mean, there's the 1660 Ti version of this. It's like $1,600. This particular model was $2,300 plus tax, so like $2,600 out the door. The next model up is like $2,900 at this current time, plus tax is like $3,200 out the door. So if that's worth it to you, then do it. But like I said, if you have a desktop, then odds are you're going to be on your desktop for games just because it's more comfortable, larger screen. Alright, so now you can see the difference that 2080 Ti has. Now regardless that the CPU is better, that 2080 Ti is just going to fucking crush games. And that's important. But, you know, still, the 2070 Max Q for what it is and what you're getting in a small, compact laptop is quite amazing. Alright, so I'll load up some Apex here. So being that Apex is Source Engine and it's not really that good of an engine, it is in a way kind of a good benchmark to see if your hardware can handle things like this that you can just throw at it and see if it still runs well. You know, a lot of games that are out, like The Division 2, Destiny 2, anything from Frostbite or Snowdrop engine, they all run better than this engine, but you know, there's a lot going on, so it's kind of a good way to see, is your hardware dialed in? Are you going to be able to play things that are, you know, CPU intense, graphically intense, and there's a lot of stuff going on, even if it's not necessarily optimized the best. So, and the answer is yes. On something like this, on this laptop, you are going to be able to play Apex. I don't run high settings. I don't even run high settings on my 2080 Ti just because there's certain things that are annoying, like God rays and motion blur. So I'm getting about, you know, if I look back, 110. If I look over 85, now I'm in the 70s, now I'm back to 80, 90, 100. Once we get down, we should be in the hundreds, well over the hundreds, which is nice for a laptop, you know? You don't see that too often. I've never experienced a laptop that can actually keep up with a desktop, and they finally have the hardware available to allow us to have something equivalent. could do that if you chose to. Quality is pretty good, it's decent. I would love to see laptops, you know, those tiny little wireless speakers that have grown to be so popular, like the Sonos wireless speaker, the Amazon one, a few other ones out there, that the quality of the speaker is just amazing. Now, my mouse is glitching out, it's probably going to die soon. However, laptops I feel like are still lacking a little bit in a sense. But that being said, it's not bad. It's not like terrible. It's just, I think that in general, laptops could be better if they really wanted to. Somebody's respawning. Let's go kill him. Play. You can easily see what's going on versus other 15-inch screens is just too hard. It really is. Like, it just makes things so fucking impossible to see anything, especially if you're in a firefight where you need to like see somebody. Directional sound, you can actually, with these speakers on the laptop, and I mean, I could be using headphones obviously, but you can actually, it does have decent directional sound, which is kind of surprising. But since the speakers are so far apart on either side of the chassis, it actually gives you somewhat exceptional, you know. I knew to look this direction and then I saw gunshots, but yeah. What is that? Oh, kill people. Oh well. I'll just go try to fight these guys. I really think my mouse is gonna die soon. This is a good mouse. SteelSeries wireless rival. Amazing mouse. I haven't charged it in like a week, so I'm assuming it's glitching out because it's gonna die soon. megahertz poly, so you get the good response. Combined with the 144 hertz, it's really just a good setup. Oh shit, I didn't know that. I thought that was a teammate for some reason. Oh well. Anyways, you guys get the idea. The FPS is good. Laptop's amazing. I don't think there's anything else I really need to cover. This does get I almost want to say uncomfortably hot after gaming after a while, especially if you have, you know, it starts to get your hands sweaty. Even if your hands are cold, it's so hot, it's like your hands can be cold and get sweaty at the same time. It does feel nice if your hands are cold, but even then some. It gets a little warm right here for sure. I think if there's anything else, I think that covers everything. it really runs amazing actually for a laptop. Getting your money's worth. So I definitely suggest this one or the Asus Zephyrus. I think it's the S or the whatever the 17 version of the Zephyrus is, because you know one of the benefits of the Zephyrus is the keyboard placement is here, you know, so your hands when you're gaming aren't going to get as hot. I mean, it still is warm right here because the motherboard and the CPU, it still dissipates heat. You know, the fans are blowing it out here, but there's still air that gets inside the chassis, which will heat the metal up. So regardless of which model you have, unless you're gaming on a separate keyboard, you're going to get hot. So anyways, that's my review of the GS75. Tried to cover all the things that I think anybody would be interested in knowing about before purchasing one of these, because it is kind of a expensive buy, you know, at $2,600 at this current point in time. So anyways, hope that was insightful for you guys. Take care.